So you want to throw far. Well, you have to get the nose down. Thanks for joining Let It Fly Disc Golf, and in today's video, we're going to talk about different techniques to help with that. Stay tuned.
Let it fly into the sky, let it glow into the night, let it take flight, just slip away, it'll let you find your way.
So this might be a couple part series depending on how much information is put into one video. I don't want to make these long videos, so I might actually split them up. So definitely, if you're watching this for the first time, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that this way you get the notification when we drop a new video. But today what we're going to talk about is getting the nose down and why that's important, and then we're also going to talk about different techniques. So whether it's going to be in this video or the next video, but I am going to talk about why it took me so long to get the nose down, even though I was doing everything else perfect. So there's some obvious techniques that we also need to incorporate. One, if you haven't ever heard, is called pouring the tee. And it's basically taking your hand and pointing the fingers down. Okay, what I like to think about is, you see how my thumb is kind of even with my hand or my arm? This is what I'm looking for. So you take that, you put the disc in your hand and you're pouring this down. Now, if you're doing it correctly, if I were to pour liquid on the disc, it would just kind of trickle off this way. If you do everything correctly and you're pouring the tee, when we get into the power pocket and we go to throw out, but the idea is you're taking this bottom side and you're scraping along the ground. So then when you get to the hit, or basically the hit is here, once you get to the hit, this is nose down. When it pivots out of your hand, you see how it's still pointed nose down, and then it will release like this. With the tech disc, there's a lot of cool data out there. If anything, you just want to be in the negative. What that means is that if your disc is neutral, that's 0. A little bit up, just even a little bit, is kind of pretty dramatic. We do not want the wind to get under our disc. We want it to stay on top. What will end up happening is the wind will help it get to flat, and as it starts to spin, it starts to stabilize. Now, if you have the nose up already back here, when you go to rotate, you're exposing the bottom of the disc up. So sometimes whenever I say in my videos, whenever I'm filming from behind, I want the disc, I want to see the stamp of the plate, I want it to see it from the back end. If I see it up like this, then what ends up happening is I know that I'm going to have to re-correct it whenever I get to the hit, and that's not always the possibility of getting there. I want to see the flight plate here. Once I go here, then I want to see the back side of it, which tells me I'm getting the nose down. If I get to the hit point right here, and I still see the top of the flight plate, more than likely it's going to go nose up. Now, there's some issues with this for some people. I'm one of them. While I'm pouring the nose down, some people don't like to pour the nose down when they get to the point of their reach back. Okay, the reason for that is it makes them feel like they're locking everything up and they're not able to get to the hit a lot cleaner. So what some people would like to do is stay loose. As they get to here and they get to the hit, that's when they pour the nose down. Once you pour the nose down, you feel a little bit of tension, and if you don't do this enough, it's going to feel very awkward. Okay, another thing that you want to also keep in mind that is really important is to keep the hand below the elbow. This is the reason why you hear a lot of terms saying keep your elbow up. So there is a protracting your scapula. I like to think of it as just pushing your elbow out, but I'll link the video here, and that will help kind of lock in certain things in your body so you can leave other things loose. But the idea of that is we want to keep the elbow up. There's another thing that can also help with this, and I'll explain it in a little bit, but the idea of it really is just to keep the elbow up. If you're the type of person that throws down here, it's really easy to get your elbow below your wrist, and then now you have to throw like this. Now, the problem with throwing so low down here is if you're throwing nose down and you get to here, sometimes you have to adjust your body so that this way you can get the launch angle right. If you're throwing nose down, we want to kind of throw nose down up here, not so much down here. Now you can kind of get away with this, and some people have this tendency of doing an air bounce. if you get down here and you're really low, but you give it a little bit of nose down or a nose up, what's going to end up happening is the disc is going to try to drive into the ground, but the wind is going to get under the disc, lifting it up. And you might even get turn out of it depending on how stable or understable the actual disc is, and you still might get distance. But the idea of is you're constantly throwing like this, and you're having to adjust your body angle this way. That can be detrimental on your body because of the way our body wants to rotate with good positioning. What other way? Let's say that you do have your wrist above your elbow, you are pouring the tea, and you still can't get it nose down. Now there's other things that can also help with this, and that's the grip. So you take your natural grip where you line the disc from here to here, right? And then you usually tuck your fingers under, place your thumb close to the rim of the disc, not way out here, not so far in here. You can play with that. There's no like, this is how you do it. I like to get a little bit of this fat on top of the disc, which also allows me to kind of grip the disc without the thumb. But the idea of this is I'm pouring nose down. But if you need more, you can throw the disc like this, where the finger, the top finger, is on top. Now, the reason why this works is because this part of your finger, if you have small hands, will sometimes cause the disc to come up a little bit. And that's the reason why the wrist is so important, to bend it down. With this grip, you can see how much more I can get the nose down. Now we're focusing more on the back two fingers to hold the disc into our palm, so that this way it releases out. Some people don't like this because of the fact that it does hurt their hand when they release the disc. Now, if you're like me, I don't like to change the structure of my throw with outside factors, is the way I guess you could say, right? It's like people who throw free throws in basketball where there is the granny shot, right? And there's a percentage or something out there where it shows that you can have a higher percentage throwing a granny shot for some people versus throwing overhead. But because of the fact that people feel like that's awkward, then they don't end up doing it. So that might actually work for you. What I would say is play around with your grip as much as possible. The main factor here is that it needs to get nose down once it gets to the hit. There's no way that you're like, well, I can throw a nose up and still get the nose down by releasing nose up. It's not gonna happen. You have to release nose down. Okay, so another technique that you can also consider, especially for the people who throw into a net. So let's say you're at the house, you're working on form, everything's looking really, really good. And if you can get your hands on a tech disc, this is really, really gonna show you, because I threw into a net for so long, I mean, hours and hours throwing into a net, and I still feel like I couldn't get the nose down. I would get like clean releases and my brother would be like, that looks excellent, and but it's still a little nose up. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm doing everything. The form looks fantastic, right? And I still can't throw a nose down. And like I said, I will share that in either this video or the next video, or if this video is not too long, then I'll share it in here too. But why that doesn't work, even with what I thought was pretty much perfect form, or at least in the realm of each little category, saying that it's okay. But if you're throwing into a net, I have a net it's not that tall. I think it's like maybe 6 feet, 7 feet tall. I think it's 7 by 7 is what it is. Now, it has a little cutout, and the idea is you don't want to throw into the little like area. You want to throw a little bit above it if you have that 7 by 7 net. If you have one of the big nets, the 10 by 10, definitely have a higher release or a higher hit. What I would do is take a ribbon and weave your way through the little things and create like a little bullseye. Okay, create a little bullseye on the net, so that this way when you hit, or if you're recording yourself from behind, you can see where the disc actually releases. This is really important because some people who can get nose down angle has a bad launch angle. This is according to Tech Disc. So your launch angle, if I release here, this is a low launch angle, okay? If I release at least shoulder height, okay, that's a good launch angle. you can manipulate this with bending over at the waist to create that hyzer, anhyzer, or whatever you're looking for. But the idea is that we want to have a high launch angle. The higher you go, the more nose down you want with the actual disc. Another technique that you can also use is just that in general, making sure you're releasing the disc high enough. Now, the problem with this is that you get into a shape shot where you have to hit a gap and it's really low, there's a lot of trees, and you're like, I can only throw flat. To me, that's perfectly fine. What I imagine is coming across my shoulders and releasing here. If I have more room for the height, then I'll think about coming a little bit higher. This also plays an important role as far as your shoulder goes, because if it's low here and you're trying to release up here, that's a very awkward movement. It can help, it can work. Ezra Aderhall talks about this in one of his old videos where he talks about reaching really low, then bringing it up, and then releasing it at your hip point. That can work, but for me, I don't like it just because when I come here, I feel like I have to pick it up. And if you're doing this, I have a tendency to pull my shoulder up because I think about pulling, right? It's not a pull, okay? It's a rotation. At this point, there is some type of rise, but that is just because of where you need to get your elbow. So if I point it down here and I'm coming here, you can see how the disc is automatically going to come up to my chest and then out to the hip. I don't want my swing path to feel awkward. So for me, this is something that you can try and it might work for you. The reason why I talk about so many different ways of doing certain things in my videos is because I've tried everything. Once you find something that does work, then you stick with it. If you need to adjust it later, then you do that as well. Okay, so lastly, in this first part series, it has to do with the wrist. Okay. Oh man, this will, if you've done everything you possibly been able to do and everything looks good, you feel like you're pouring the tea. When I first got the Tech Disc, I tried everything that I possibly could to get the nose down with this Tech Disc. And no matter what I did, it was very, very weird. Sometimes I can get like at 0, which is still decent enough to throw pretty far. But I would say 90% of the time, it was nose up. And so when I would throw and it would register as like -1, -2, I was always dumbfounded because I was like, I didn't do anything different. Or I assumed that I figured it out and tried to replicate it. And once again, 2.5, 3, 5 degrees nose up, still couldn't figure out what it was. This is the thing that you need to make sure that you pay attention to. And if you don't know if you're doing this or not, you need to record yourself and do it as slow as possible. So what it is, and everybody talks about it, Josh from Overthrow talks about this a lot, and it basically comes down to this is the factor, this is the reason why you can't throw nose down, even if you feel like you're doing everything else. What it comes down to is your wrist not being either straight up and down with you, like this, or a little bit tilted this way. If your hand is tilted even a little bit this way, you're gonna throw nose up. If you throw like this, but you throw with an air bounce, okay, that is definitely gonna save your disc, because if you're throwing like this into the ground, it's gonna, even if you're pouring the tea, it's still going to create a nose up throw. This has just been a bad habit for so many years, and I think the reason why I was able to still get good distance is because I was able to alter my throw. I think back in the day I would throw like this, where I'm over my front leg and I'm throwing like that. Well, if my hand is like this and I bend over like that, you see how it becomes neutral? But that is a bad way to throw. Why? Because I can't generate any power. we want to stay like an A-frame and throw like this, okay? If my hand is tilted this way, where now it's nose up, and I'm still trying to throw with a flat plane, I'm gonna end up throwing nose up, even if I pour the tea as much as I possibly can. So I'll do it towards the video. Okay, my wrist is turned a little bit back. I'm in my position. I'm trying to release at a high point, and if I'm pouring the tea here, you can still see under the flight plate. If my wrist is neutral, meaning like this or even like this, and I point the nose down, you can see that with this angle, it's pointed nose down when I get to the hit. That is the key to throwing nose down. So I like to get in slow motion, and I do this without a disc because it's easy to see if I'm doing it. So what I do is I like to stand in front of like a window, a mirror, or something like that. And I point my hand at the mirror or a window or something reflective, so I can see if my hand's tilted like this, okay? We can also rotate our wrist, and we can also rotate our arm, okay? Now, if you're protracted, it's hard to turn this part. If it's not, it's easy, and what that means is just pushing the elbow out. Push the elbow out, stick your arm out. Now try to just rotate the whole arm. You really can't. You can only rotate the wrist. This is the reason why it's important to make sure that you are protracting, or at least pushing your elbow away from your body, and maintain it even with the straight arm. Maintain that filling. So you're here, and then all I'm gonna do is try to swing my hand on a flat plane like this, not like this, not like this, but straight across as flat as I possibly can. Now, if you're recording in HD 240 frames or even higher, you're gonna see if your hand is staying flat, even turned a little bit like this. But if it turns a little bit like this, you have a problem. That's going to be it for the first part of the series. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell so that this way you get notified when the second part comes out for this. In the second part, we are going to talk about how you can get nose down with the briefcase hold and another technique that me and my brother have been working on. So make sure you come back and check that out. Leave in the comments if you struggle with nose up, not throwing far. What are the things that you struggle with? We might put out some videos for that as well. Other than that, keep up the good work. Get out in the field. Let it fly. Peace.
Let it fly.